Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So, Graham, ever since I joined Team 17 at the beginning of this year, Michael Heppel's group, I've met some very interesting people. And somebody else who joined Team 17 around the same time as I did is today's guest, Lizzie Marshall.
Oh, well,
hello.
Well, welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast, Lizzie.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honoured to be here.
Well, whereabouts in the world are you from?
I was born in Doncaster, South Yorkshire, and I still live here from whatever. And I am a twin. I don't know if that was on my bio, but my twin lives in Edinburgh. So
right. Well, that did come up, and given that we want to start with the real crux of you, in a sense, it seems to me that your relationship with your twin was has been fundamental to the way in which you've developed as a person.
That's a very delving and interesting question, Graham. Yes. I think when I was, my birth was interesting to start with because Mum was not expecting twins. And in those days, they didn't have scans or anything of that nature. And my sister was born in the kitchen and the midwife said, oh, there's another one. So they carried her upstairs. And lo and behold, it was me. But they didn't know whether they was going to save me or my mother because it was nip and tuck. Anyway, they got the doctor and we both survived. And I think from that point, looking back, I know it's it's quite an interesting thing to say, but I think I've had to fight to somehow be acknowledged that I was the extra and not expected. In as much that I got told, in my adult life that my mum said to me that she nearly gave me away to the next door neighbour who was desperate to have a child and couldn't. And that was an interesting tale. So, yes, it seems to have stemmed almost from being born that I've had to fight. Not fight with my sister as such, but somehow it was almost like she didn't want to be a twin. She never wanted to be a twin, and she made me somehow, suffer for it. And that's just a big word, but she did.
And but she was, born on the same day, and basically same age. Presumably you fought back and said, "Well, that's your view. Go away," or did you?
I did and I didn't. We were both very artistic at school. Very artistic. We were known as the artistic twins. Right. She pursued that career in a graphical sense, and I went down a different road and ended up teaching the subject and doing surface design. But I think it stemmed from also the sort of like the marriage that I was in, which wasn't working, and I got out of it. And I think because I did something about it, perhaps she was in a marriage where she was stuck. I think she then felt that she was jealous, if you like. That's a big term as well, that I'd done something and she hadn't. So that stemmed a lot more of the animosity that went on.
But I've only really brought that up because it is mentioned in your bio, and you actually use the word belittlement, and that really is. I've got an older brother, but we weren't born together. We were 3 years apart, and I'm not saying that I don't remember occasions when he belittled me, but I'm sure he did. Because older brother and so forth. But the thing is, in your case, it does seem to have shaped the way you're artistic and your poetry that comes with it. I just, you read some of your poems, and it seems to, it's almost like reading Wilfred Owen, that you're in a war zone. I don't know whether that's the case or not. Is that how you feel?
Gosh, how do I feel that I've been in a war zone? Do you know what? That is quite a big statement. And I think I've been fighting all my life. I think I've fought to be born. I think I've fought to stand up when I've been knocked over, and I've had to fight to be heard. So, yes, I think I have been in a war zone. I think emotionally I have been in a war zone. And I think that's why I'm so adamant that I want to get my point across. And
well, that's why you're here. I mean, yes. we're 100% Team Lizzie. So, don't worry. We have to ask you the questions.
Absolutely.
Because you are a really interesting person, because, Kevin sought you out. He's quite good at stalking people.
I don't know.
Well, you are. But he stalked you, and now all of a sudden you've come onto the show, and it already, I think our listeners will realize that, you are quite an interesting person, but it's what were the reasons that happened? And you've already touched on some, but you must have had some technical ability. Where did all that come from? The artistic twins. I mean, crikey, you must have been able to draw.
Yes, that's all I ever did. I mean, what was going on in the household when I was a little girl? I went to my bedroom and I just drew a picture, and that's all I did. And I know it sounds a bit of a cliche, but my element was to go to my tools to be creative, and that saved a lot of my, I suppose, the balance in my head, listening to the arguments that went on in the house when I was little. So that's carried on. So when I was and have been in these war zones, I went to my paintbrush and I went to my writing tools and found out incredibly that I could write poetry, and it came out of me, just like the painting that I'm obviously very aware that this is, I suppose, a significant moment in my life, which when I painted my painting Rocking Still, which came from the poetry that I'd written. And it will be in the book that I'm hoping to launch next year. So, yeah, it's been something of an eye-opener to me that my brain had all this, my guts had all this to let go. But to me, thankfully, because I could do it, because I knew I had to go to these places, it saved my sanity, really.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever painted, Kevin? Has that been your thing?
Not really. Being a kid, never really had that much talent. My other half, Ruth, paints, goes to art classes, paints, and actually is quite good at it. Yeah, yeah. But I think it's really interesting, Carol, Lizzie. We'll edit.
Doesn't matter what you call me.
Because I always see you coming up in Facebook groups and so on as Carol Elizabeth Marshall.
Yes, all of it. Yeah, I want to be all of those words. Yes, all of the names.
So, Lizzie, you're going into creative places and almost shutting off from a situation you don't like, and that's very interesting to explore. Would you be counselling the rest of us to know where we're creative and be able to go into those places for mental well-being?
Definitely. Yes. In fact, Team 17, I've had recently an interview with Michael, and that was one of the things I said. I mean, my life at the minute is a bit chaotic because my daughter's nanny's gone, and anyway, she got the push. So I'm helping at the moment. So I haven't got a lot of time, but come September, I said to Michael, I'd like to do something about 17 minutes of creativity for like a period of maybe 17 days. So it doesn't matter if you think that you're not artistic. That's got nothing to do with it whatsoever. It's being with something that you can allow to sort of like come out of you. It can be a line, it could be just a mark, it could be anything, but it's very important that you are in that space in your head, being with it for every day, really.
I went through a period where I painted and wrote poetry. It was probably somewhere between sixth form and leaving for college and so forth, and there was a, I mean, the point is, it might have been just leaving university, I went to a polytechnic in Leicester, and basically leaving there and getting a job. And I remember feeling a little bit, I shouldn't have been, but I feeling a little bit down. This is before the jobs came along, and you know, I didn't know quite where I was going to go, so I ended up writing some poetry. So you know, I've perhaps associated poetry in particular with kind of being down, but it can be uplifting as well, and you know, I would imagine if you're a teacher of that, you don't want people to be hanging themselves after reading it. I mean, you want to sort of uplift them and you know, effectively give them a reason to, you know, heal themselves. And that's one of the things that you mentioned in your bio, is this ability to heal. Is that something that you're very proud of? Because presumably you've helped a lot of people through it.
I hope I even help more people. That's my future intention, is to allow this book to surface, because it's going to be called Surfacing to Self.
Right.
And in it, there are, you know, 30 paintings and 30 pieces of poetry that the paintings are about. But it's basically a little, I suppose, memoir of how survival, really, you know, going through this war zone. And I'm hoping that people will connect massively to some of the things that may have happened in their own lives, or will understand then, reading it and looking at it, how important being with creativity is for your brain. I mean, I've recently found a book called Your Brain on Art, and how it transforms us, and it blew me sideways. I even said this at the Team 17 Day, about how I knew when I'd read this book that I'd been doing this all my life. And this proved to me, you know, scientifically, that we all can benefit from being with a creative, you know, practice massively.
And so that means what exactly? So I mean, Kevin just said earlier that it kind of missed him a little bit, not Ruth, but basically missed Kevin. Yeah. I mean, which ended up being an accountant. So I suppose in a way we kind of understand now.
But accountants can be very creative.
I know they can, Kevin.
I was about to say that, Kevin.
Yeah, But
when the boss comes in and says, "What's the profit this month?" and I just reply, "Well, what do you want the profit to be?"
Yeah. Well, that's just lying, Kevin. That's not that's not creative. But I have to say though, I do think there is something to that, and I actually know Kevin to be very creative anyway, regardless of his career. But the thing about being creative for everyone, how can you persuade the guy who can't? This can't is something that I found very difficult as a word ever. Can't paint, can't, you know, they say it to themselves but you almost have to break that shell and get in there and say, actually, you know, there is no such word as can't. If it wasn't there, what would you say? Well, you can't do it yet. So basically, here are some tools to get you going. Is that the kind of facade that you've got to break through to get this creativity flow?
Definitely. Yes. Your biggest, I mean, when I did my TED talk, I actually finished with saying, please go and allow yourself to say yes. Yes, let me go and have a go at this. It doesn't matter if it's not with paint. It doesn't have to be with paint. It doesn't have to be with a pen. It could be anything. It could be building a cradle for your granddaughter. It could be making a cake. It could be just basically looking at something creative or being with, in a creative environment. That's about the 17, or in our case, 17 minutes, because it's Team 17, but 20 minutes of that every day. It could be just reading a book about something creative, or watching a program that's about creativity, or listening to a podcast that's about creativity. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's something that you connect to in a creative sense.
That's interesting. And what does the word creative mean?
Well, that's a $22 question. I mean, what would anyone say to that question? I mean, I think creativity is, I wouldn't say it's being something unique. I don't think it's that. I think it's just allowing your senses to ignite and all of your senses, all the 5 senses, and even I would say your gut, to ignite with something that really ignites you. I've always been creative, and I've got a grandchild who's incredible, but I think people just think that word creative is quite a scary word, and it isn't. We've all got it. It's inside of us. I mean, you've just got to allow it to come out.
Yeah. I mean, my wife says that she can't sing, but and I suspect I can't, but I can at Ellen Road when I go to see Leeds, because I can sing really well there. Well, because when you're surrounded by other people singing, they can't hear your particular notes that you're reaching or not reaching. But I think the thing is, it's the willingness to try, isn't it?
It is. It's that willingness. It's that I don't want to be scared. I used to have a studio in my garden where lots of young ladies came, young mums at 7:30.
Kevin's a bit like that, but he doesn't want anybody to know.
No, he could come to it was fabulous. I used to call it the shed, but anyway. And 7:30, they used to come in absolutely like fraught and like coping with toddlers and all sorts. And within an hour, if that, they really had just come back to themselves. And that was enormous. I had to kick them out at midnight because they never wanted to leave. But honestly, that went on for years, this group of women. I'm still in touch with them now. And they absolutely loved it. I'm not saying they weren't from creative backgrounds, because it was an art thing that we did, but it wouldn't have mattered if they hadn't have had that, what they thought was talent, inverted brackets. It was being in that space.
When they first rocked up to the shed there in your garden, what would they present with, and how would they come across? And I've heard about you, Lizzie, and is it? But apparently you do some child minding whilst we do something else. Is that what happened?
No, I didn't child mind. I allowed them to come away from their children at 7:30, whether they had a part-time job or they were looking after babies and toddlers. But they walked into my studio and just found a place of sanctuary, heaven, and picked up whatever we were doing. It could have been anything. I can't remember now, but it was all sorts of stuff we used to do. We used to do, various things, and just forgot, they came into that space and everything else was like over there. And they came into that little, my world of.
Was that one of the best moments of your life?
I loved teaching. I loved it, and I still do. And I love teaching my grandchildren. I love teaching the children that connect to me, even now, that I used to teach a long time ago. And and mentoring people I love to do as well, igniting them to sort of to teach them that, everything's possible, and not to believe in themselves, really, and that life's a journey.
I love that word, ignite. You've used it twice now, and it's something that I picked up on the first time but didn't mention. I think it's a wonderful it's almost like a fire, the impact of a firework that you light it and then bang, it ignites, and that there is something about you being the guy with a lit match.
I love Graham. I just want to come and hug you. If that's what I come across as somebody I like, I am the one that's lighting or giving them the match to light. Massive compliment. Thank you so much. Because when I was teaching, that was my biggest aim, was to ignite these children that came into my art room. And I'm sure I probably would think that most of them would say I did. Even though some of them weren't, massively into art or whatever, but they loved it because it was ignition of having fun.
What was it like at art at your school then, Kevin?
My school?
No, Kevin's school. I was thinking about Kevin's school because he was.
I can't actually remember very much about it. I mean, we must have stopped doing it about year 3. Oh gosh, what would that be now? That's
year 9.
Year 9, yeah. So it's a long time ago. I can't remember they started teaching us how to paint properly, but that was so near the end. I remember being told to go out and get decent paintbrushes and things like that, but never got very far into using them. So I probably missed out a lot on being taught how to create properly. But Carol.
Yes.
Question here. Sorry, Lizzie. Question.
It's all
right. How much of this is about letting people get into the zone?
Well, it's massively into that. I mean, it's surfacing what's inside of you and being allowed to just ignite that and bring it forward. And it is getting into the zone. It's being with yourself in that place for hopefully longer than 20 minutes, but 20 minutes is enough. And just being with yourself. And it doesn't matter what comes out. In fact, it's quite therapeutic to allow that to just happen. Just let it happen.
Yeah. And I guess if you are in the zone, 20 minutes feels as though it's flown past.
Yes. Yes. And especially if you're in a flow. I mean, my TED talk was about being in the flow. I mean, when I painted Rocking Still, my goodness, I mean, I don't even remember painting that painting.
No.
Because it just came out of me. I mean, I was just the conduit holding the paintbrush. It just flowed. It was, when I stood back and looked at it, I must admit I was really emotional because I had no idea that was inside of me, honestly. The best.
It is amazing. It's I remember doing a number of, you would call them sculptures or something like that, a bit lower, smaller side, like sort of ugly faces, and there's plenty around in the school I was at. But basically, I did some of these, and it was coming up to the time when it said, well, do you go down the O level track, which basically meant that you could pick up a pen or a paintbrush, and you could draw things and paint things. And although I probably could, the teacher said, actually, no, it's already, I've stamped your O level already. Don't bother, because you've got all these sculpture things, and they're like easily the best we've had. So basically, that went through there, and I just thought, oh, that's really good. I'll go back and try and get them. Now, I reckon they were sold on Settle Market. I mean, at the end of the day, somebody took them and sold them, or it's proudly on somebody's mantelpiece now, in a teacher's mantelpiece somewhere, saying, look what I did. Actually, it was mine, and so I want it back. If you're listening to this, no, seriously, it really offended me. I was thinking, where the heck is? Or it might have been in a bin somewhere, which is possible.
Probably the latter.
Yeah, it may well be. But you never know. You never know. But there was a sense to that flow idea. You were doing these things, and you weren't thinking of anything in particular, but it was just coming out. In my case, in these sorts of things that we did, faces and all kinds of stuff. But basically, I get that. Were you ever a teacher within a school?
Yes, many times.
Okay, so basically, were you like invited in, or were you a permanent staff thing? Were you a consultant type thing?
I was a permanent staff. Okay. I'd worked in 2 private schools, many, just ordinary public schools. But I have taught in various levels. So I was invited in to actually take over a GCSE group in a massive comprehensive, because one of the teachers, the art teacher, his wife had just given birth to twins, funnily enough. So I was thrown in that deep end. That was an amazing journey.
Well, you wouldn't have been old enough to have nicked my artwork. So basically, the end of the day, I rule you out of the crime. But the truth is, when you're there in this big public school, there'll have been an awful lot of people, just like me and Kevin, more or less the same age. And basically, some of us would have been, reasonably interested. Others, not interested at all. How did you deal with that? Because it wouldn't have been an offence to your sensibilities.
No. I mean, nobody's. No, I can't say that I'm any good at numbers, but I mean, I cope. But I think the kids that came into my GCSE art group, they obviously were wanting to do it, so they were there for a reason. So it wasn't that difficult to engage them. Although the party that we had at the end of term, in fact, because the teacher didn't come back because he was too stressed with his kids, his twins, I ended up doing caricatures of all of them. We had this party and they thought it was funny. No, I think, engaging people that
so you were
don't
mean
want
to the mean people.
I was not. No,
you were. From Doncaster.
No, I wasn't. No. Well, the head was fabulous. I won't tell you what they called her, but she was brilliant, and she loved the fact that I think the reason I got the job was because she knew I could ignite them, and I was only there for 6 monmonths, I think.
So what did she call you then?
I'm not telling you.
Well, that's all we've got time for this week. No, seriously, it's interesting that you obviously went into schools there and made a bit of a difference to but you are right. When you're in it and you want to get that GCSE or you want to get that out of it, then you're that type of, you've got that interest, and they'll hang on every, especially if you connect with them. Presumably, if they think you're a bit of a bore, etc., then they'll do it in a mindless way. But if you've got them, then I think you'll probably produce some pretty good work through them.
I think lighting that match, which I could do, I knew I could do it, and I think I had that. I think I was born with it, and that has ignited the match inside of me to produce what I do and to cope with what I've done. It's
copyright the next 100 days, by the way. Don't worry about it. But it'll creep into your book. I just know that. Hey, editor, like that much. But
that much, it will be there.
It'll be there. But we keep doing this, don't we, Kevin? Keep adding things to people's books.
We do.
But, it's not a problem. No, it's not a problem.
How would you go about igniting Graham?
My goodness. I think I'd find out what he. I mean, I was obviously interested in football, isn't he? Because he's told me about Leeds United. So I think I would go down that path and ignite him into looking at some of the past posters, maybe of Leeds United, and get him interested before he started to have a go at producing something for himself. I really like this. You got to go with their flow. You don't say do this because they'll just turn off. You've got to find out what ignites them.
I did a lot of portrait, and I've probably mentioned this before, Kevin, but basically I did a number of people who were not married, but basically boyfriend and girlfriend, that kind of, in the family or close to the family. And I paint them, and they're reasonable likenesses. And then, of course, they'd split up. But it was like as night followed, if I did a painting,
no,
that's them. It was like, Sword of Damocles, that's them. That's their relationship over. Not immediately, but fairly closely thereafter. And it was like, so I stopped doing that then. I stopped doing
I just think they'd probably say, don't do one of these.
Although, when you think about it, there was a business in it, wasn't there?
Well, there was, yeah.
If one party wanted out, we'll get into painters.
There's a business relation to be had. No coincidence. The daughter is a divorce lawyer.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you have to have a few quid to engage her services.
Yeah, you just need to start painting pictures of prospective clients.
I suppose there is a bit of a side hustle there that Sophie could do, but We'll see. You'll meet her on Saturday because you're coming to my wife's. She has a big birthday on Saturday.
Right.
It's next week. We're having a party on Saturday. And Kevin and I are meeting for about the 5th time, I think, ever. Yeah. So anyway, by the time this goes out, it'll have passed, and Kevin will no doubt have disgraced himself in my village somehow. I don't know how, but
sounds good.
And it's a very big weekend for you and Ruth as well, Kevin.
Well, yes, we're disappearing from our 40th wedding anniversary. Big family get together. So yeah, it's celebrations all around. So it's your wife's 60th. The day before our anniversary is daughter's wedding anniversary. Day of our wedding anniversary is daughter-in-law's birthday, so there's a lot of celebrating to be done next weekend. Meeting a new grandson for the very first time, who's now just over 2 weeks old.
Wow!
Big celebrations.
Yeah, but isn't it? I mean, it's really lovely to talk about all these family things and so forth, but they can be. I've noticed the stress that she's been doing it all by herself, kind of thing. Because I've just done a minute amount, but basically she's done it all, and there is stresses there, and that kind of full circle takes us back to you, Lizzie, because you've coped with that, particularly growing up, and part of my heart bleeds in a sense, because effectively it seems such a waste of time and emotional energy to have conflict like that when you probably don't need it. It happens because of like really simple things, like you mentioned jealousy and things like of that nature, and like childish wants not being, shall we say, managed properly by adults in the room. And I think we're becoming a bit more like that as a nation, that we've got too little testosterone, that basically and too few fathers in the family, where people can actually just put a dampener on things like that, and say, look, no, we're going to be like this. We're going to have faith in these things, and we're not going to be that kind of family. We're not going to shout and bawl at each other. That isn't going to be us. Now, these are my views. And everybody else is wrong anyway. So basically, I do feel for you at that point in your life, because it seems to me it could have been avoided.
Gosh, I think I'd have to speak to you about that in massively great depth. But yes, my story is incredibly deep. And it goes back, as I've said, to my childhood. So I think if my childhood and my relationship with my sister had been different, possibly, yes, it could have been prevented. And yeah, it's the roads that I've actually walked down have been the wrong ones, a lot of them. And I think that all stems from being a child. And I think talking about this in earnest, your childhood is very important, and how things affect you is, I don't think lots of people well, I'm not saying lots, I'm saying some people, especially growing up now in this day and age, is the parents aren't aware, I think, of the upset that's going on in a 6-year-old child's mind. And that worries me somehow. I mean, I look at my own grandchildren, and I've got 4 grandchildren in the same family, actually, and their parents, my daughter and son-in-law, are extremely busy, and I think they both know that if it wasn't for me, stepping in as I do, those children won't be as balanced as they are at the minute. So yeah, but I think that also stems from knowing that I want these children to be balanced. Massively. Sorry about that.
That's one of the children there disagreeing with you, I suppose. But you've got them to bark as dogs as opposed to say nanny.
Well, no, I insist all the time on kindness. I'm massively on that big word.
Love needs to be in families, though, doesn't it? In the sense that you will always agree with your offspring, or them with you, and so forth, and bound not to agree with me, because I have some fairly deep views of my own. And basically, but having said that, I believe that there needs to be strength in the family. I believe that there needs to be love in the family. Laughter is a massive thing, and if you get 2 or at least 3 of those, then you're going to be on a winner. And I think that's something that. But I don't know whether, had you had all those, would you have been the person that you are now? Because you seem pretty chill. You seem that you've got. You've had this lifetime of artistic creation.
That's an interesting question. Again, that's going in my book. Would I have produced what I've now known of how, I have done?
That's it. I mean, you're a product of all of the experiences you've been through.
I am. Yes, very much so, Kevin. And I think that's because this memoir is going to trickle through the book. I am who I am because of the life that I've trod and where it's taken me, and the things that I've faced and come through, and I think that's why I'm I'm so adamant that it's about surfacing yourself. And I was able to do it creatively, can't say it. So I probably would I be the same person?
No, you probably would have been. You'd have gone out to France and been a dancer at Folie Bergère, and you'd had an entirely different life. But
no, I'm only 5'2". I can't see that happening. Actually, my mother was a dancer. To be honest, anyway, that's funny. You should say that.
My wife's a dancer. Still dances actually. So. It's one of those things that she's enjoyed all of her life. But going back to yourself, I've seen some of the paintings, Lizzie, and honestly, they're staggeringly good. Do you have them? Do you sell them, or do you basically presumably you need to sell them because that's how you presumably it's one of the things that pays the bills?
No, I don't need to sell them. Right, okay. But yes, I do sell them. I think I sell them to people who are ignited by what it means to the image that they're looking at. The way that I produce paintings has evolved greatly. And I have been lucky enough to have been taught by very massively fabulous mentor painters, 3 that are one in watercolour, one in acrylics, and the last one in oils. So I've had 3 fabulous teachers. But especially the last one. Sorry,
you said I'm staring now on a different screen at. You mentioned it earlier, rocking still, and
yes,
the first line of the poem that goes with it is "I'm a Russian doll falling over, standing up, rocking still." Now, when I look at that, it's funny. Honestly, I don't know where the Folie Bergère thing came from, but I'm thinking France. I'm thinking I've seen other paintings in the similar, not quite the same, but a similar sort of evocative, deep red, lots of different colours going on there. I don't want to get this wrong, but we went to a Renoir exhibition in one of the Parisian galleries, and back in '85, we got married and we went there, and we were lucky to see it, the Renoir thing, and it's like you're an inch away from it because they didn't have all these guns and everything else keeping you away.
No.
Or masks, but basically the thing about this is that it is it's unique and all the rest of that, but it's reminiscent, I think, of some other painters. Have you been driven by your love of other sort of inspirations in painting?
Good question. If you I don't really be able to see it on the photograph, but in real life, you can see this piece of canvas that has been stuck on the back of that painting. It's just a little square, rectangle, and it represents Klimt, Gustav Klimt, because I used to use a lot of his influences when I used to teach, especially younger children. And when I was painting that painting, my mentor at the time, Caroline Hulse, she said, she gave me this particular topic to do. Well, we had to go and do something personal and produce a mood board. And I wanted to paint this painting of this piece of poetry. And she said, she cried actually when she read the piece of poetry. And she said, well, if you can produce this painting, I can't wait to see it. And that came out. And she in itself said, she and I both said, where the hell did it come from? And I think in as much that I just let go and let the paintbrush do the work. I think going back with what you've said, I do like the Impressionists very much. I wouldn't say I was influenced by them, but of surface design, which where I started, I think, yes, I like the colour. I think I'm very colourful as a painter. Everybody says my paintings are colour. And lots of painters are afraid of colour, but not me. And so I think the colour is what perhaps has influenced me.
Shoots off the page, and I have to say, the big question in my mind, which I wanted to ask all the way through this conversation, is which comes first, the poetry or has it ever come second? So basically you paint something, but what you've said so far is that you've been painting to a poem.
Well, neither of them come first, neither of them come second. It all depends.
But you said, no, I'm not having that, because basically what you said is that, Rocking Still was something that you'd written, and then you painted this whatever.
Painting, yes. So I suppose it's the poetry. Yes.
Right.
The poetry first.
So
and then the painting.
Are you a poet with that angst and all that goes with poets, that you get that out of you, and then you think, oh, what were the themes going on there? Is that what happens?
No, I don't think it is. I don't think of a theme. It's never a theme.
Right.
It's in the work that I've done so far. It's been almost like a journey line. It's like a timeline that I've got. So I think the theme is does the timeline change? Is it about getting out of, going up that mountain, going down that road, coping with whatever, or releasing something that was joyful? I mean, I've done a painting called Awesomeness, which was when I went skiing. So I think it's about my life, really. It's about the paintings, and the poetry is about the journeys in my life. So that's the theme.
But if somebody came down from Mars and they said, right, the first thing I want you to do is to look at this Rocking Still, whatever, and then you put a copy of today's Daily Mail, an article from that, and you put it underneath, and you said, look, that one generated the painting. Yeah, they wouldn't have a clue, would they?
Ooh, would they have a clue? Well, you've seen the piece of poetry yourself, Graham, and you've seen the painting. So do they connect together, do you think?
Of course. Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, it's because I'm in the painting. You say I paint with flow, emotional colours. I have strength, a double win from birth. And there's everything you've talked to us about your sister, your mother, and things that happened in your youth, etc. Your passions. I get that's where the poem was going, but I don't think I'm clever enough to see necessarily that flowing through, apart from maybe the vibrancy of it. And there's something in that. The eyes are looking a little bit doleful, I think, and I wouldn't have got this. Looks like you say it's something to do with Clint, but it looks like you've stuck a mobile phone on it. But there's something at the top. Yeah, I think that's what you were referring to. Yeah. The point, what I'm trying to get at is, and what, with your permission, we'll put that in the show notes, and No,
you can,
yeah. So, but effectively, because we've come across with that before, haven't we, Kevin? Somebody did the show notes for us and put up a painting from somebody, and they came after us with a big stick. But it's like, oh, come on, get over yourself. Anyway, all I'm saying is that sometimes the connection between the two. Yeah. And they are two different genres. It's almost like seeing somebody good at cricket and you say, that relates to football. Yeah. Does it? And that's the bit that I'm finding most difficult about the work.
Okay. An interesting point, actually. I don't think there's been many people. I'm sure there are, but I mean, I haven't found any recently. I probably not have dug deep enough, but there aren't many people who actually paint poetry. No. There are people who try to paint to music, and when I was being taught oil painting, we were read or were given a verse from Under Milkwood, for instance, and we were told to take that verse and try to express it. So it's an expression, in my opinion. It's the expression on the paint on the canvas of what the poetry is about. So
I'm sure that's what you believe, and this is probably because I'm an ignoramus when it comes to this, and I know enough to be dangerous, but the bit that I'm interested in is how I can tell that thing called a poem is related to that thing called a painting. Knowing that it's you're the join, and knowing some of your backstory helps enormously. But if you didn't know that,
well, that's why the book and all the paintings and poetry are going together. And that's why all the book and the paintings and the poetry will be exhibited together so that people can see where they all come from and what they're all about.
You say, what I think you should do for that is do an audio, a bonus thing, an audio recording for each one of them, and say, look, just in case you didn't get it, because, you know, I've met somebody from Yorkshire who was a bit of a dimwit, and he didn't get it. And the guy from Newcastle, well, he hadn't a clue. He's like glazed eyes. And is it still Thursday? I mean, basically, one of the things that you could do is like an audio tape that basically says, I wrote this poem at this particular time, and that's kind of the reason for the red and whatever, something of an explanation, a join, because I think, because if you're thinking about the essence of creativity, that's when that's the real creativity that you're going to get. So you can have that for free, because basically, you know, all of our...
I'm going to write that down.
Just honestly, seriously.
He's after his commission this morning.
Oh, no,
he's after his commission. I mean, striking a match in essence. I mean, massive word essence. I've always loved that word. But thank you for that, Graham. Honestly,
seriously though, I genuinely, the idea of putting the picture, painting and poetry, it's almost like as if one did come before the other, tell that story, because I think people will love that. Don't put it in writing. I would have lift it up a little bit so they hear a bit of you, and I think that's something that, and you can just do that by putting a link in the book to somewhere that is hosted somewhere, maybe on a web page or something. I don't know.
Can I come back to you on that? Take this out of the podcast. Can I come back to you on that, Graham?
So you can. Yeah, I mean, anybody that's interested in Lizzie's work, then what we'll do is we'll definitely put a link to her site, and you'll find out more about Lizzie's work there. But it because she calls herself Lizzie, the website is carolelizabethmarshall.com. Now you go there and you'll find more of these paintings, and I think you should go there because, frankly, the paintings are really good anyway. And I think, you know, when Lizzie's brown bread like the rest of us, those will be worth a fortune, won't they?
Do you know, it's funny you should say that, because I used to have a window cleaner who used to come down to my studio, and it was all windows, my studio, and it sat in the most beautiful place. And anyway, he used to come in, here it was, you know, washing the windows, blah, blah, blah. He said, I suppose you'll be famous, love, when you're dead.
There's no like folk, is there? Especially from Doncaster. I mean, but I honestly, seriously though, I mean, I don't know, Kevin, do you have any observations about just this, you know, the generality of what Lizzie's doing here? The painting, we haven't talked about all of it.
I love some of those images, and I think before Lizzie mentioned the word colour, that was the thing that was coming across to me. It was a certain vibrancy about things. But now, kind of a last question from me, Lizzie, is you write in the poem. Is the image already in your mind when you're writing it?
Yes, that's a good no. Yes and no. I think the way of working is I record the poem on my phone. I just say it out loud. And then I play it to myself, and I keep playing it to myself until I just let my mind just wander, really. And then, because I was a surface designer, I start off designing just a shape of some sort, and then it takes off from there. So I ignite myself by listening to the words I have written. Has that answered it?
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that this sparks in my mind, Kevin, is we talk mainly to business people, and often it's about mindset and how can I actually help somebody. And the next 100 days is really a Catholic sort of thing. Is we talk about anything. If you can do something within the next 100 days, but imagine you getting yourself across the desk from somebody who needs a bit of help with their creativity.
Yeah.
And you have this ability to allow them to basically put together some words, and then somehow you can actually bridge them into something creative, whether that's painting or drawing or whatever. We had somebody on the podcast not too long ago with who talked about digital scrapbooking. I mean, it might be a collage or whatever it is, but basically something that they have created from the work. Imagine the sense of growth that individual would have, and then could they then apply it back to their work? I mean, that's almost like rocket fuel. Don't know how it'd work, but I mean, probably you have to reinstate your studio, probably, or at least metaphorically your studio, because it would be people all over the world doing this. I think.
I think you're right there, Graham. I don't think people know I'm going back to what I said earlier. I don't think people know what they can ignite inside of them, and I think unless they connect to it and allow that the essence to come through, they'll never know. Well, you've got to start. Yeah. If you're fearful in the first place, you'll never do it. No. And creativity is going to be the biggest thing in our future worlds that we won't see. But absolutely, being creative is the biggest, sort of job that people will search for people who have got that skill. Yeah. And I don't think people are waking up to that at the minute. But it's massive.
That's a whole different podcast when we talk about the impact of certain things that are happening at the moment with AI and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, one thing that will insulate yourself and your grandchildren or whatever will be this ability to be, to be yourself, to be creative and make that work in a future economy. But we've kind of run out of time, Lizzie. I mean, you've been I want to thank you, first of all. I mean, I know that Kevin would as well, but I want to thank you for being so open and honest about you and your circumstances. It was refreshing.
But it was, if I hadn't have been, you wouldn't have understood why I've evolved the way I have. And I think you've helped me, Graham, because you've ignited something that I need to pursue, which is, to allow people to understand the two that have come out of me, really.
That's very kind of you to say.
I'm very honoured that you've asked me to do this. Thank you very much.
Well, I didn't. Kevin did, and I hadn't heard of you until about half an hour before we started recording. So, but Kevin, he's probably known you for years. You know how it is. But it's probably a subject to your painting somewhere. There'll be a painting of Kevin. I'd love to see what colours. It would be black and white, Kevin. Do you think?
Well, probably, yeah. That's why Carol wouldn't paint it.
It's funny actually because I mean they used to say at school, I used to have people. Going back to the shed at the bottom, my studio. I used to people come and say, "Oh God, I can't use colour. I don't know how to do it." Frightened of it, absolutely frightened of using any colour. Really, it frightened them, and I think. You've got not to be fearful of what's going to come through you. And I think that's where we need to start. And that's why I want to ignite that.
I read something from Dan Kennedy in the latest. Kennedy's a copywriter in America and a guru of direct marketing. And he wrote this column this morning saying you've got to scare people sometimes.
Yes,
because
definitely.
A client gave him a copy of some direct mail that they were just about to send out the following day. And he said, well, what can you advise? I said, I can't advise anything because it's, shall we say, rap with a C in front of it. And basically, effectively, he said, there's nothing I can do with this. It's just boring. It's bland. It's colourless. You're talking about yourself, and it's, the offer is rubbish. So I can't do anything with it. Send it out. You've wasted your money. So, the thing that I think he was getting to was what Lizzie Marshall does, was have colour. Was have poetry and was have something that's going to connect to the human condition that enables them to make a decision, and that I think is above anything what you can bring to the world from here on in. But anyway, on that bombshell, it's been really lovely having you, and thank you for Lizzie Marshall joining us on the Next 100 Days podcast.
Thank you.
Graham, I think the thing that's going through my mind at the moment is just about creativity in general. How do you put yourself in a place where you can be more creative at whatever it is? We've been talking to Carol today. We've been talking to Lizzie today about painting and about poetry, but it strikes me creativity. The heart of it is you're making something from nothing, or you're transforming something you've got into something that's very different. Mm-hmm. So creativity can be almost anywhere. Mm-hmm. We've created a podcast this morning out of nothing. It's a thing now. Mm. I suppose if I look at the week and think of some of the things that I enjoy most, I'll normally be putting out 2 podcasts in a week. I enjoy creating podcasts. I enjoy creating material to run workshops.
Yeah, I mean,
that whole creativity thing, I think is something that if you want to get the most out of life, I think that there's a real satisfaction about almost that creating something out of nothing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know that about you anyway. I think it, you know, on your gravestone, you're going to have this man shared, and it's a bit like you are extremely good at that, whether that's sharing of yourself, of your time, of your thoughts, you're helping other people share their messages. You're sharing other messages. You do that, and you do it really well. And I wouldn't probably have ever done the podcast without your inspiration. So, but the thing is, together, sometimes I go off on a tangent somewhere, but you have the devastatingly good question that you ask. And it's that thoughtfulness that comes across. Every now and again, I get lucky with a few questions, but basically, it's that kind of. With Lizzie, it was relatively easier for me because of my background of having kind of done a little bit of poetry, done a little bit of art, etc. And you know, I've been thinking in retirement, Kevin, that when I do retire, whenever that happens. Maybe painting would be something that I would probably enjoy as a sort of like, right, I'm going to get away. A bit like Lizzie, I have a summer house, and basically we call it the studio, so it's perfect for painting. So effectively you go in there and you just, do something on, probably not, a couple. I don't think that'd be a good idea. That might end up, or if there's a business there, then I'm very happy to do that. But no, I think
you're talking about that, Graham, and I've got a great hobby in the background of model railways, which is all about creativity.
Yeah.
It's in effect, it's 3-dimensional art.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it inevitably it's come from childhood. But there's more sophistication in it. You can do things that a child wouldn't ever be able to do. And so it really is an interesting microcosm of a world, but something that you're passionate about, the trains and so forth. And so for me, big respect to you, and there's lots of people like you. So, but the artistic thing that Lizzie's got going here, it's this join between 2 mediums of art that basically and the creativity and the connection between them that most intrigued me from this conversation. But it's been an interesting podcast today, and well, today I have been Graham Arrowsmith,
and I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.